So the stablecoins question has come up. And I think one of the things we just discussed is that Bitcoin is a digitally native way of paying someone. Stablecoins are not that. Stablecoins are a digital representation of that asset, i.e. the dollar. And for most people, what does that mean? That means you're at the whims of what regulatory decisions happen to the dollar. You are also likely trusting a centralized service. So if we use in the case of USDC, Circle, and they can be shut down and shut off. So short term, of course, and we discussed this on the spaces, stablecoins offer a perceived stability that Bitcoin possibly doesn't today. And I would acknowledge that. I would say, yeah, cool, I understand why people are using stablecoins. But if you move to the medium to long term, you're already seeing it today. And so this is what's happening in Europe with the MiCA licenses. I think it was actually announced today that Crypto.com, I think, have now delisted USD.
Tether.
Yeah, Tether. And so today in Europe. Don't quote me on that, but I'm 99% certain it was done today. And before that, Coinbase delisted. And I think OKX delisted certain trading pairs last year. Of course. There are things happening behind closed doors there, but the acknowledgement is still valid in that you can shut down that very easily. And if you have a centralized actor, you can shut down that means of payment. And therefore, the benefits that you have with Bitcoin outweigh that long term, because right now, we're not going to go into the weeds on like the financial system, etc., but the US dollar is dominant for a reason, and there's a reason probably 99.9% of stablecoins are the US dollar. The US hegemony is entrenched. But to kind of bring it back to this digital representation, what you're getting is not a digitally native asset. Bitcoin's a digitally native asset that you can exchange. This representation is not that. So whilst it has those benefits today, the regulatory shutdown, the centralization, pose risks in which some of the issues that we just discussed when it comes to why Bitcoin payments matter. And we use an example in the report. So in 2016, I think it was, I don't know if I imagine some of you may use Proton, but Proton was shut out by PayPal. One day they went, turn them off. And so then Proton pivoted to Bitcoin payments. They're back now, they use credit cards, etc. But it shows you the volatility of using a centralized service, is that you can quite easily be shut down. And that's the fears that you have with stablecoins, which then veer into CBDCs and kind of a political world that I won't go into. But that's kind of the first bit. Is there anything you guys want to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, stablecoins are really like a patch on top of the traditional financial system, right? They're not actually, I think, as innovative as people claim, right? They're IOUs for promises for redemption that are held at central bank account of, in centralized bank accounts of cash or cash-like, backing, right? And then really all you're doing is exchanging IOUs that can be redeemed with that centralized company if you want to. Or if you can. So it doesn't actually solve a lot of the settlement challenges that we talked about. And really it doesn't even solve that big a technological problem. Like JP Morgan Chase tomorrow technologically could decide, we're going to stop doing KYC and AML, and we're going to let anyone in Argentina anonymously open a bank account. That would give the same effect as what stablecoins are essentially doing. Like it's a regulatory arb that is allowing people to have bank accounts at banks that they don't have accounts at. And over time, we are going to see clamping down on that. We already see like controls that are in place around these decentralized permissionless stablecoins where accounts can be frozen or blacklisted or controlled. And just like the regular traditional financial system, the US and other governments are going to want to see the same controls applied to stablecoins. And that's going to limit their usage. And that is why Tether is, by far and away the largest, is because they are the least compliant, and so the value there is the access to traditional financial systems without having to go through the same hurdles that are provided there. And so I think over time, stablecoins are just going to look a lot more like just online bank accounts versus Bitcoin, which is actually true possession-based bearer instrument. Yeah, was there a follow-up for that?
So the question is, people would understand how stablecoins work more than Bitcoin because of the lack of price volatility, most likely, and also just the fact that it would cost less than making a credit card transaction.
I mean, I would personally argue that stablecoin transaction isn't a settlement. It is an exchange of liabilities, and you still have a counterparty that you ultimately need to settle through the traditional financial system, right? You're exchanging IOUs that at some point in the future can be settled, so there still is that counterparty risk of the issuer and the issuer's bank account behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, the lack of volatility and the familiarity with the dollar, we haven't talked much about inflation. That's not really the point of a payments use case. Obviously, there are other benefits to Bitcoin outside of that. But in the short term, while stablecoins are allowed to exist as they currently exist, I do think they're a very appealing use case for many people, which is shown. I do think the potential and excitement around stablecoins is hugely overblown relative to Bitcoin. Like one of the things Danny mentioned earlier was, Bitcoin doesn't have a centralized, marketing department or CMO that's singing its praises. But in the course of this research, if you add up all the stablecoins market caps together, they're 9% of Bitcoin cumulatively combined against $2 trillion versus 9% of that. The actual usage and volume that are existing in stablecoins today is far, far smaller. And there are ways to dampen the volatility and abstract that away from both the user and the merchant by using Bitcoin as rails or automatically cashing it out on receipt so that the sender can send fiat, the receiver can receive fiat. Behind the scenes, that's going in and out of Bitcoin for the purpose of actual settlement, whilst avoiding all the issues that we've just talked about with traditional payment rails, and still getting the same volatility dampening fiat benefits as well, if people prefer.